It's Stacy. We are Loving My Veteran, and this is Walking in My Shoes. Sorry that it's late this morning. I had another engagement I had to take care of first. So this will be posted to the groups as well, because I'm sure some of you are not going to be here due to the time change. Yesterday we kind of talked about what defines us. So today I want to talk about treat others as we kind of want to be treated. And it's interesting that we're coming up with this topic because I posted it to our group, but I did it to a few others too. There was just a question that, and remember again, I never condone abuse or violence. And if you need help, get it. Reach out to somebody. But we also often hear, forget the bumpiness, y'all. I'm sorry, riding down the road. We also often hear people talk about that we don't like the way our veteran talks to us. We hear them lash out to us and say negative and hurtful things. And it's not every veteran that does that. We just happen to see it in a lot of the groups that we're in. That I hate you, I want a divorce, why are you this, why are you that? So my question became, that I put out there, was, what are we saying back to them? What are we saying to them? We look at, a lot of us feel like we're doing a lot of stuff for them, we're doing more for them. And again, I'm saying this in front of Carl because he's driving me back from Jacksonville. Yeah, there's him. See, Carl this morning, yes. So what do we say back to them? You know, what are we saying that's hurtful? And it wasn't until one evening that Carl and I had our disagreement. And please understand, we are like, hey Natalie, we're like normal people that argue like normal everyday couples. And you got to define normal here. But as we do this, I found that, or he pointed out to me, that I was saying a lot of very hurtful things that he talked like that were abusive to him, that were hurtful, that were harming to them. And so how often are we saying that back, to them? And we don't understand that this is all escalating the situation. So, you know, we've talked about before pushing buttons. And so when he pushed my button, I would push his back. Or when I pushed his button, good morning, Courtney. When I pushed his button, he would push mine back. And so the thing became very simply that we just spiraled out of control. It was like, well, if you're going to do this to me, I'm going to do that back. And so when we want to change the situation, I can't change him. I can change how I treat him. And as a return, it will eventually change the way that he treats me. Now, understand, since almost day one, he has called me his princess and he has treated me that way 90% of the time. Do we argue? Absolutely. We all argue. So we have to understand what's the difference in relationship issues and what's the difference in PTSD issues. Because we want to sit here and blame everything on their PTSD. It's their PTSD. It's their PTSD. So now their PTSD becomes a crutch for them and an excuse for us. And we can't do that. We have to become people first. So when we're looking at, sorry, I just got a text message I was looking at. When we're looking at how this thing plays out, we talked about yesterday defining who we are. If we want to be kinder and gentler and more loving and more caring, and that's who we decide we want to be, then that's what we need to portray back. And it can't just be all the time that we come in and we sit here and we say, well, why am I going to be nice to them because they're not being nice to me? And I'm not just talking about our veterans, I'm talking about everybody. You know, we have people in our lives that are jerks, and we deal with them on a regular basis, this horrific jerks. And so we decide, well, if they're going to be jerks, I can be a jerk back. Well, that's beautiful, except for what does it do? It just fuels this perpetual fire in what we're doing and who we are. So we have to be careful when we do that, and I'm famous for that. Yeah, Carl's laughing. He knows that it's very true.
I didn't laugh, I snickered.
He snickers because it's true. I mean, we do this back, and I think the next thing that he's going to do when we talk about doing things and doing them back is he's going to start taking these videos and be like, well, wait a minute, yesterday you told them this, so you've got to practice what you preach. It's not easy, and you can't go from one mindset that you've had for so long, like we talked about yesterday in identifying who we are. You can't go from that to this total change in how we are overnight. It doesn't do that overnight, because we all put up personal walls. We all come with our own set of baggage. We all have that makes us unique. So for me, I had an abusive first marriage. The second marriage was, Carl will tell you, being married to a very narcissist person. And so when I came to this relationship, I already had those preconceived ideas of that's who guys are, and that's what relationships are about. So that wall was kind of already built there. Not a boundary. I mean, a flat out wall was already built there. So I took that horrific wall and I kept it there. And so you chisel away, and I think probably the most repeated line that him and I have is, I'm not your ex-husband, and my answer to him is, I'm not your ex-wife. Because we guard our hearts based on our past experiences. So when we're doing this, we get this mentality like, everybody in the past has done this. This hasn't worked. This is protecting me. Sometimes you have to chisel that away, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long process. It's an evolving, lifelong process. Because as you get through one point in your life, something new comes out. So as we go through this, you have to understand that this is where we are. This is what we do as we go forward. So we need to be careful in what we project outwards, because what we're projecting outwards is what we're going to get back inwards. And it may sound like, oh, all the effort's on me. It's not all on you. It is two, and it takes both of us to work through these. And it takes each other calling each other out on these circumstances. But you can't do it in a hateful, angry manner. It's the same thing with your kids. You know, you can't sit here. We watch this happen as children grow up. When you say, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Because we say you're bad, not their behavior is bad. So what happens to children? Children get this idea that they're bad. I use this example a lot. My son, my youngest son, Seth, in Georgia, we have an exit exam to get you out of high school. So you've sat through all these classes. This is your exit, babe. You sit through all these classes, and you go through all this stuff, and you pass school, And then to graduate, you have to take a standardized test. Hey, Ricky. So when we take this standardized test going on, and my son is not good at a standardized test, he had passed all of his classes, he failed the standardized test. So now Seth is like, well, I'm dumb, right? And he wasn't dumb by any means, any stretch of the imagination. There was no dumbness to him. So he takes it again. Again, he fails it. Now he's really thinking he's dumb. And then the pressure comes on. Am I going to ever get out of high school? Am I ever going to graduate? Am I ever going to do these things? So Seth had this idea that he was dumb. Well, finally, he took the test. We had studied and studied and studied. He knew the social studies part. And he totally bombed it. And so when the results came back, I looked at it and it said, your test had been graded on science. And I'm like, wait a minute. He took social studies. And so we were going to get them to re-pull the test and hand score them. But it meant 4 weeks. There was another test 2 weeks later. And I said to him, Seth, look, I know you've passed this. You knew your stuff. They gave you the wrong answer key. Go in and take the test again. So he did, with a totally different mindset, that he had passed the test and he could do it again. And when he took it the last time he took it, he had passed it beyond belief. So when we get in this mindset that we're a failure, or we get in this mindset that we're dumb, or we get in this mindset that we're of no value, that's the mindset that we carry with us. So it's gonna be hard to change how our veteran feels when they feel like we've demasculated them sometimes, or we've taken away from their ability. And it's gonna be hard for us to think that we matter, because for so long we've been told we don't. And I'm not just talking about from our veterans' perspective. I'm talking about from our entire lives. There have been people who have said to us, we don't matter. So we've built that up amongst us. And it's just one of those things that happen. You give me a candy bar too?
Snickers.
Yep. Sorry, we stopped for a minute. So it's one of those things that happen, and it takes time to overcome that. It takes, down here at my feet, it takes time to overcome that. It takes time to get past that. But whatever we're projecting and whatever we start to believe in ourselves is what others believe in us. So yes, our veteran may have moments where they say, you're dumb, you're the one to blame, you're at fault, you're this, you're that. And so we begin to believe it, right? And so then we get defensive. I'm doing everything for you. Why do you treat me this way? I must be dumb. I must be stupid. I must be this. Because that's what we've heard. But at the same time, you flip it around. We've said the same thing to them over and over and over again. While they're in the middle of a depressed state, or a state where they can't function as well, we tend to say to them, I got this today. You can't handle it. And that may be true at that moment, but we don't give it back to them. And we project, you're dumb, you can't handle it. So it's all in that projection of how we project to people. And so it is very tough to get past that projection. I can remember when I was 300 pounds, people thought I was stupid because I was a lazy 300-pound fat woman. What they didn't know was I'd lost some weight. I had a medical condition which caused me to take steroids and gain 100 pounds back. I was still on an ambulance every day. But what was the perception to the real world? The perception was, you're fat, you're lazy. And so that was what I began to believe, that I had no value, that I was fat, I was fat, but I was lazy. And so that was the perception I started to put in my head, because that was what society defined me as. PTSD is tough. There is no doubt. All levels of PTSD are not the same. My PTSD from being on an ambulance is not the same as combat-related PTSD. Not by any stretch of the imagination. So we tend to say everybody with PTSD is this. Well, they're not. Everybody is individuals. So this is a perception thing. Do we have people with PTSD who get violent? Absolutely. Do we have people who don't have PTSD get violent? Absolutely. So you can't let that projection of some people keep reflecting back on your particular situation. I know that Natalie was watching earlier. I'm hoping she's still on here. But Natalie's husband is a combat veteran who is now a police officer. So I just want you to think for a minute and be in Natalie's husband's shoes. He already has his PTSD from being a combat veteran, right? And now he's a police officer. In a world where we as society tend to think that their lives don't matter. Where we as society, and I'm not talking about individual people, but as society, we get in this habit of saying, it's tough. Their life doesn't matter. They have no value to us. They have no this. They have no that. So what do you think he feels? Not only is he suffering from his PTSD issues, but he is now suffering from going to work in a society that thinks he is not worthy as a police officer. So when you start adding all these things, it makes it tough for all of us. So our self-worth is not defined by other people or their opinion of us. And that's where we have to stop. Our spouse's self-worth is not defined by us or other people's perception of them. And a lot of times we as spouses and partners tend to vent to family and friends that don't understand PTSD. So now all of a sudden they have this preconceived idea that this person is violent because they've seen it portrayed that way. That this person is whatever. Very often, and this is just true of society in general, very often we don't talk about the positives. We don't talk about the good. All we do is bitch. It's what we do by nature. We bitch, we moan, we complain by nature. So when we're doing this, we talk and we vent to people on the negative side effects of them, on the negative side of them. We don't talk about the positive things they've done. We don't go out and say, they've done this. My child did this. When we're sitting there, we talk about, oh my God, he's had such a bad day at school. I don't know how I'm going to deal with him. He's done this. And that's what we do. We don't come back in and say, he had 6 stars today and I'm really proud of him. So that's kind of where we have to be super careful in where we go with this perception and how we portray to others. And all of this negativity just fuels more of it. So when we become positive in ourselves, we project positivity, those walls will eventually start to break apart.
Yay, 45 and a 60.
That's how it works. And I know I'm going to cut this short today because we are on our way back and we're going to be on some back road. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I will get this posted to the group momentarily. Y'all, we are going to make it in this world. Natalie has asked, and I will put that out at 3 o'clock Eastern time today. We will have a support meeting for spouses only by way of Zoom. And I know it's a little quick notice, but Natalie has asked, and we can kind of put a better time in. But 3 o'clock today Eastern time, I'll put the link on probably in the next hour or so. We will have a spouse or partner only, no veterans involved, support meeting, so we can vent and talk and be very open, and we will do that. Don't forget, we have Walking in My Shoes every week. Tomorrow, this podcast also will have their coffee